Good evening and welcome to Democratic TV, television for Democrats by Democrats about democratic values in issues of public policy. My name is Nathan Higdon and I will be your host this evening. I have with me Warren Yarbrough and Jen Green, who are also on Knox Pride. And so this evening we're going to talk about past, present, and future of Knox Pride. And so to begin, Orrin has done a bit of research on Knox Pride and the history of Pride in Knoxville and East Tennessee. So do you want to give everyone like a little bit of an idea so they'll have so they'll know what
Yeah.
Pride's like around
No,
here?
definitely. So Knox Pride is actually started and stopped a couple different times and had a few different lives. And our current version that we have right now, I believe this was its 13th year. But some of the original roots of Knoxville and activism and anything that we would consider like parades or marches began. Usually, the genesis that most people agree on, and the research I found through people like Ed White, was 1971. And it was immediately after Stonewall. Everybody's more active and trying to be visible in the community. And the University of Tennessee decided, these students decided to try and have a gay student union. And when they tried to organize it and get permission from the university, they were denied. And then they regrouped and they asked again, and they were denied again. The university giving the grounds that it was against laws of nature, and there was some sort of statute the university had at the time. But that didn't stop them. They still met outside in local areas around like the fort. I think what's now the Laurel Theater was like a church and a coffee shop that they would meet at. And it was two individuals that are noted as being the people that started it. Most commonly were Norris Dreier, and he wound up being in politics a little bit later on, and
He
a
was
real
a Green
active,
Party.
a real active person that I never knew of him, but I know a lot of people that spoke fondly of him. And then Carl McDaniel. Those are the two people that are credited for starting that in 71. And that year also seemed to, in the same light, there was instead of being a gay student union, because they couldn't be affiliated with the university, they became just the Gay Liberation Front. And that organization, there was a large anti-war protest that was happening that year. And so the Gay Liberation Front, a large group of people that represented it, marched in that anti-war protest, and they walked from the university Circle Park area all the way up to Market Square, and there was a rally, and then they walked back. And they waved a flag and like had signs that were saying gay is good and whatnot. And so on their way back from Market Square to the university, the group of people that were doing the anti-war march put them in the front of the parade. And so that was the first time that a visual presence of gay people was ever like put in the media. And some media outlets even said they mistook it for the entire group of people being gay. And so so the news kind of credited it with being one of the first Pride marches,
I
actually.
didn't know that myself, and this was mostly GLF
Yeah.
at this point.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's what a lot of people credit that as being. Now, there were a lot of organizations that were run in the late 70s and early 80s, or events, obviously, with the AIDS crisis, kind of led to a bit of starting and stopping. And the GLF eventually kind of became 2 or 3 different separate groups. And things like ARC were started in the 80s, and of course, that means ARC is AIDS Response Knoxville, for people that don't know what that is. And there was the Metropolitan Community Church was kind of founded in the late 70s following all of this. But from what I've researched and trying to find through word of mouth, it's a little difficult sometimes, and other sources, but things go a little quiet.
Yeah.
There's obviously a very good reason, and that's because of the response that the community was having to deal with the AIDS crisis. But then, due to that, there was a large gathering of drag queens and lesbians and allies that were trying to rally around the mostly gay men that were suffering from the AIDS crisis. And that's why in the 90s, early 90s, that's when what we can consider some of the first official Knox Pride kind of entity things were started. There had been marches in Tyson Park, and there had been some presence in parades, but 1991 is credited for the start of what's now called Knoxville Pride as an entity, and it was mostly run by drag queens and allies for us. And
And you were how old in 1991?
3. but so
I'm not going to comment on how old I was.
Yeah, me either.
And so there were some really great people that were involved with that at the time as well. And in some of the research that I've done, and I don't know if there's a way to put links on there, but there are people that had a very visible presence even today, and like Julia Tucker, and so like I found in here a keynote speech that she gave in 1993 at a Pride parade and festival. And so back then they would basically meet at Market Square and walk to the city county building, stand in front of the steps and celebrate, hug each other and hold hands and sing and give a speech. And they would be excited if they had about 350 people show up. And so it's kind of amazing how we've grown from what that was to what we are today.
And that's a bit of a segue into 350 people into what we had on Saturday, June 22nd, just the other day. And Jen, do you want to comment on what we have grown into currently?
Yeah, so the estimates that we've received, it's 6,000 people came out to view the parade, and we had several thousand people participate in the parade itself. And then we are still working on estimates for how many attended the festival, but last year we had an attendance of 34,000, and we're expected to have a 5,000 to 10,000 increase over that number this year. So we'll see. We're still waiting to hear about how our attendance was this year.
And you know, we were all boots on the ground, and you can see some of the photos that they're going through. That's the interesting thing, as all of us are board members for Knox Pride, and while we're getting all of the work done, I've never seen the Pride Parade in Knoxville. The closest I saw was dropping Del Shores off so he could get to his car on Saturday morning. And I was overwhelmed at the number of people who were congregated down near Barley's on Jackson Avenue, and I was just like, there's rainbow everywhere. I mean, it was overwhelming. So that's actually something, since we're speaking of present, like what are your all's experiences with seeing Knox Pride, or for that matter, other prides, but especially our own? Have you gotten to experience it outside of being on the board?
My first year experiencing Knox Pride, I moved up here in October of 2015. My first experience was actually volunteering. The last year it was at World's Fair Park. I spent the day outside of the green room, you know, making sure people were checking in and everything for entertainment. And
I think I remember me.
yes, it's so I spent the day doing that, and then I ended up submitting to be on the board that year. During the elections, I joined the board then, and then a year later was elected to be president. So,
Bless your heart.
So you know, seeing it grow from the last year we were at World's Fair Park, where we were at capacity there, to being at the Coliseum and being at capacity there, it's amazing to see that span of growth in just a few short years, honestly. Yeah. I mean, when you really look at it, and the numbers that are coming out to celebrate, and it's not just in the area. I mean, it's people from all the, you know, surrounding states and people coming from across Tennessee, you know, so it's fantastic, and it's been wonderful to see the impact we're able to have in Knoxville proper, but also in the surrounding area.
And that's important. What's your first experience?
Well, considering this is my first year on the board and being
newbies.
Yes, I'm a freshman. I'm a baby. But considering that this was just my first year, I was able to, you know, remember last year. It wasn't that hard, and it was unbelievable. I mean, that was when, you know, again, that was record attendance even for that, and now we're expected to even have more. And I'll tell you that the parade is one of those things that you can go to a larger city and you can see their parade, and I don't think it has the same impact. I think that part of it is our downtown is very, Gay Street in particular, like there's just something about witnessing that massive of a crowd with that much rainbow going down like this, the most visible, iconic street in the city. It's, and you know, there are other cities like Atlanta that I've been to and they've had larger parades, but it just didn't have the same impact. And so, especially if you're from here, you know, it's very emotional to watch that because of the presence and just how important and significant this area of the city is, just filled to the brim with people that are happy. And at the festival, I think that I have been going to Pride long enough that my first one was when we had them at Market Square, and then, you know, I went to Pride all throughout the World's Fair years, and, you know, now to the Civic Coliseum. And I think that it is amazing to see how much the growth has gone, especially if I go all the way back to when it was in Market Square, and it was almost no different than like a sundown in the city, but like still, like just thinking of what the capacity of that space is to, and like I joked with a friend yesterday or the day before, and I was saying, could you imagine if we had that same number of people squished into Market Square?
Yeah.
And so I have to say that like that it's kind of amazing that you create almost like a small gay village for like a day for the Pride.
I think there are about as many people turned out as live in Maryville, so it's kind of like we moved Maryville to the Civic Auditorium for the day. So this is that's a good question, since you just came on the board this year. How does the preparation work and being on the board and participating in the festival differ from being a participant? Because I think that's a big disconnect that folks don't realize, that we plan this year round, with let alone all of the activities that we're doing monthly and sometimes almost weekly around the year. There's something for people to plug into Knox Pride with. But with that, how is the difference between this year and last year for you?
I mean, it's kind of night and day, because as a visitor only, you know, you get to kind of like pick and choose what you want. If you want to go to like, you know, a certain event or not, or go to a dine out or attend something like that. But being part of the committee, like you want, like it's a bit of a family kind of event. You know, we all work so closely together, and even if like an art out, for instance, it's all hands on deck. Everybody wants to be a part of that and help out in any way that they can, even if, like for me personally, just doing graphics. Like at some point, because of the way that the print deadlines work, kind of like my graphic stuff was not needed as much leading up to right before certain events, but I could help out in other ways. And so it was like any hand that you can give is essential. And so I feel like being a visitor, like, you know, you get to experience everything, but like it's almost amazing, like to use a term, like you get to watch the sausage being made. Yeah. Like you get to see all of the stuff behind the stage and all the crazy amount of running and grabbing things and having to drive over here like last minute because something happened, and like, you know, but then from the outside it's like, you know, everything looks perfect, and they don't get to see the insanity that happens that leads up to it. And we're just, you know, you walk behind the door and you're like, oh my God, and then you walk back, you're like
smile. Jim, what do you think is the biggest challenge of organizing all of this that people don't see?
Well, I think that it is ultimately, you know, making sure that, you know, we have that list and we check everything off, and, you know,
like
making
Santa,
sure we're
twice.
basically, yes, you know, making sure that we have, you know, covered everything that's necessary for an event, or, you know, what are ideas for future events, or how do we develop this or develop that. And, you know, there's so many components as we've grown so much in such a short span of time that, you know, we're really, you know, taking a look at how certain things, how certain products are presented to everybody, and how do we change it, how do we tweak it for the better, you know. So ultimately we do spend a lot of time on that. And then also manpower, you know. Yes, we as a board plan throughout the year. I submitted the 2020 application today, you know. So, you know, it never stops. And we do spend all year planning different things, and especially the festival. but the manpower needed to put something like that on goes well beyond the people of the board, and the fact that, you know, we have some great volunteers who come out, who help, you know, really makes a difference in what we're able to provide to the community.
So my next thing I'm thinking people might find interesting to know is, what's your favorite part about being on the board, or about the whole festival, or about just being involved with Knox Pride? And I'll share mine so you can think about yours. Mine is, for folks who might look at our social media, we have someone who regularly comments on our social media pages, and this person always has fairly negative feedback. I won't mention their name, except right at Pride, and they're always so thankful for their experience, and they share all these wonderful stories about Pride, and I'm like, we're doing it for this person and 44,999 others, but we're doing it for those people who live their whole life not being or a whole year, excuse me, maybe it's their life, the whole year not getting to have that safe space to come to, and getting that one whole day, you know, to get to come out and just be their authentic self. And I think that's special. I think that's worth all of the restless nights and the worrying about everyone's safety, and the hard work and being clear. Just like anyone can imagine, you know, all nonprofit work is thankless, and for all those thankless things, it's seeing someone who complains on social media about us all year, and then on the day of Pride they post beautiful pictures of themselves, and we know that coming in the next couple of days they'll complain about everything again, but we get that beautiful thing every year, and that's what it's all about, to me, personally.
Orrin?
You know, I part of it actually is very similar with what you just said, but I will say, firstly, it's like visibility. I think that's kind of one of the more beautiful things about Pride, that I think is, for that, not just that one day, but like, you know, through the season now, it's kind of growing. It's like, you know, like the flags and the banners all down Gay Street now that we have that say Knox Pride, and the rainbows, is the visibility that as a community, and also like larger in the context of the actual world, you know, people in the LGBT community are getting more visibility, and our Pride growing is evident in that. But the other thing that just can't not be stated is, I love when someone, it's their first Pride, or the first time that they get to bring a relative, and you get to see like parents or grandparents. Like, that's the part that always like touches me. And like this year, like when we had the rain, that was a touching moment, because, you know, we're all in crisis at that point, like, no. But then in the garage, the Knoxville Gay Men's Chorus starts singing songs, and everybody congregates around them and starts singing with them, and they're crying and recording it, and that's one of those moments where it was like, that's Pride.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's kind of beautiful. And so it's those small little things like that.
The coming together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, mine would just be, you know, obviously wanting to make as much impact for the community as possible, and you know, the day of, being able to stop for a second and just see how excited people are, you know, seeing the kids who maybe are playing in the fountain and blowing bubbles, or, you know, a couple that's able to share a moment together, and, you know, and feel like it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to express your feelings for your significant other, for, you know, the others in your community, and being able to provide that in a safe space, and, you know, just being able to be able to support our community at the level we've been able to, you know, and hope that we continue to be able to provide that.
And in continuing to provide that, how do you see Knox Pride evolving as we move forward into 2020 and beyond?
So as a board, you know, there are some things that we've talked about that we need to develop, you know, further support with specific skill sets that we'll be looking for when it comes to election time. You know, this year we developed out our graphics and our media group in order to provide better engagement with the community, whether it's graphics provided by Orrin, or, media responses provided by Morgan, and publishing of things. I think that has helped improve our communication with everybody, which is always a big thing. You want to have great communication with the community. Excuse me. And then also, having the good problem of outgrowing the Coliseum. Where does that take us? And going through and looking at some sites that will potentially be options in the future, and then also kind of rehashing maybe some of our guidelines, some of our policies, just making sure that we have everything tidied up so that way we can continue to grow, and obviously be set up in a business fashion, because the capacity that we're at versus where we are now, we do have room to grow into that business style setting. And while we don't have a office of our own, our offices are laptops essentially.
Our offices
A
really
digital
are.
office.
Yes. So, that doesn't mean that we can't continue to develop those tools utilized by businesses that help them continue to be successful. And we want to be able to continue to provide pride in the festival, the parade, all of that for years to come.
And when you just mentioned capacity that's required in growing, and also that comes with the need for more, it needs more volunteers.
It does.
And to everyone out at home. There's so many different needs and skill sets, and how would somebody who is watching like, wow, I learned about the history of Pride in Knoxville, they participated this past weekend, like, what are some things people could do? How can they get involved? How can they reach out and become a part of Knox Pride?
Sure. So if you would like to volunteer, there is a space on our website. If you scroll towards the bottom,
knoxpride.com.
knoxpride.com that you can click on, that will take you to a volunteer link, or you can fill it out, and that information will go to our volunteer coordinator. If you're interested in perhaps running to be on the board, we will have applications up. We're hoping here in around late August, maybe early September.
What are some of the things what are some different positions and committees on the board, just to give people an idea of what's out there?
Well, to be on a committee on the board, you actually don't have to be on the board. If you're interested in joining a committee, that is a volunteer opportunity, and it kind of gives you the insight to be able to see how the board operates, kind of the ins and outs of how that committee operates. And if it's something that you do want to take that next step and apply to be on the committee, or apply to be on the board. We have committee heads. For instance, Orrin is head of our graphic design committee.
Yep.
So in that instance, we were looking for somebody who had graphic design experience, as well as was able to recruit some individuals who were looking for more experience in developing things for a nonprofit in particular, but also to further their skills.
And shout out to Nick and Maddie.
Absolutely.
For all their work.
Exactly.
They busted it at the VIP tent on Saturday. I have to say thanks to them publicly. They did
a great job. Some of the other skill sets are things like, treasurer. We're looking for somebody who, we have a treasurer. We're looking for somebody who has experience with, applying for grants. We applied for our first grants this year, which is what brought us those banners that are down Gay Street, which, we applied for a city grant to help with some funding for next year's festival. And while it's not a lot of money right now, hopefully it'll grow into something more. But, somebody who had grant writing experience was something in particular we were looking for. Somebody who had accounting experience or, bookkeeping experience, that kind of a thing. So there are very specific skill sets that we're looking for the positions that will be posted, and we'll actually have that information listed in the posting for each of the opportunities that are available.
But that's not to say that, if you're watching this and you think, well, I'm not an accountant or I don't
Right.
do grant writing professionally, that
You
you should
still
just,
need
yeah,
your-
we still need. We
Yes.
still need helping hands to do a lot of the work that we have to do on a daily basis. We have people that are just really good at being personable and social, and so they can reach out and get more volunteers easier for us, or someone that maybe like works closely with certain companies, and so they're really good at maybe fundraising, or we have people that are, yeah, we have a few people that are really good at working with like production, so like they help with some of our shows that we do. And I mean, if you find yourself to be a rather artistic person, then you can work on like art out in some capacity. You know, I'm not a graphic designer by trade, but I do it because of my job on a daily basis. And what I like to think that I was maybe a little bit better at was delegating and working closely with our volunteers, Nick and Maddie, who were really good at graphic design. And so it was a team effort. And so, but that doesn't mean that like, you know, I was a professional at it. And so,
Yeah.
How many what do you think your time commitment is for being on the board, to give folks an idea? Because we're really pitching hard to get more folks to volunteer, because we're going to keep growing and we're going to keep needing more people.
I'll let Oren answer that first.
Yeah, your answer might be entirely different.
I mean, I think that it's, you know, a bit of carrot and stick. I think that like knowing that you're a part of something larger and that is growing, there should be some sort of investment that people feel like they're a part of it. And any way that we can, you know, we do it with swag, or we give you like tickets to go see things or whatever, but like any sort of way that we can grow our volunteerism by having people feel like they are invested in it, that Pride is theirs. I think whatever incentives that we can do and get that feedback and get that, I feel like will be almost like self-fulfilling. I hope. I feel that way.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
I feel that way.
So how many hours would you say you think you put into?
Probably, especially in some of the more intense weeks.
Let's say average over the whole year.
Oh, well, I'd say it was very easy, 20 to 30-hour weeks sometimes, just as a mean, like, you know, a median. When the day of or the week of, you know, that's a little bit more.
Sleep's an afterthought.
Yep. But, you know, it wasn't like, it was spread out, you know, and that's the thing is, like, we're people that I feel like are successful at delegating and time management and whatnot. And if you're not, there are people that can help you with that. And so I think that that's why it's a group effort, I think, because sometimes you do get behind and people are like, we need help with that. And so, like, just being working together and open and honest, like, that's what we want from people, is someone that's just, I can help, how can I help, and we'll find something for you to do.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, moving forward, and it's something, our next board meeting is coming up on July the 9th, I believe. And so, you know, we'll have that as a opportunity for folks to come with feedback, and we'll be dropping out a survey. It should be out probably this weekend, I would say. And folks can give us their open and honest feedback about what they think of Pride, and we can consider that as we're moving forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the focus of our agenda for that meeting. We will strictly be covering the feedback for Pride, and we welcome anybody's commentary for that.
Tell us what you think.
Yep.
Yeah, it's important for us to know, and I think it's important for us to move Pride forward with knowing. And so again, that was July the 9th. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and tune in again next week for another discussion on DTV.